Hola y bienvenido al podcast de Torres Hospitality, donde entrevistamos a los mejores perfiles del sector turístico global, tanto en español como en inglés, para conocer de primera mano las tendencias, noticias, opiniones y debates sobre la actualidad, el presente y el futuro de la industria alojativa y turística. Soy Pablo Torres. Puedes seguirme en mi web www.torresconsulting.co.uk, plataformas de podcast, YouTube y redes sociales. ¡Arrancamos!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the podcast series, episode 109 today. And with me is Calvin Tilokee, who is the CEO and Creative Director of RevPar Media. Calvin, hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, Pablo. How are you, man?
Good, thanks. Thanks again for your time. It's a pleasure to have you here. And as always, I like to start with the guest of the podcast introducing himself and going through your career. So more than 20 years in the industry, mostly focusing on revenue. And a few years ago, you founded RevPar Media. So I'd like you to share with the people listening to the podcast that recapping your career, those over 20 years of experience.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do my best to keep 20 years into a couple of minutes. But I went to hospitality school. So I was fortunate enough when I graduated to get a job as a reservations manager at a hotel I did an internship with. A lot of people weren't that fortunate to get right into the industry, upon graduation, but I was lucky enough to get that opportunity. And from there, I did that for a few years in reservations. I tried my hand in hotels. I also went to F&B for a while. I worked for Gordon Ramsay, opened his first restaurant here in America was in New York. And I was the reservations manager there. Which was a lot of fun, but also really tough because they don't, in the F&B world, they don't believe in, 9-to-5 jobs, right? There's no such thing as, hey, well, reservations, you work from 9 to 5, lines closed, you go home. I had to also help out with, the first seating of dinner and stuff like that. So it was some long days. And it got to a point where I had to choose between remaining married or keeping that job. So I went back into hotels where your reservations team doesn't have to worry about that. And from there, I got involved into revenue management. I aligned with the director of revenue, who was very much a teacher, very, very smart. And she was very willing to show me what revenue management was all about. And it grabbed me immediately. And from there, I worked for a few different companies, mostly in the New York City area and the surrounding suburbs, which was a great experience. I got involved in the city, but also the outer markets. So you could kind of feel how compression in Manhattan may help you and vice versa. So I worked for a bunch of different types of hotels, select service, lifestyle brands, boutique, water parks, which I'm very thankful for. It gave me a very broad view of hospitality in the industry and see how there are so many different facets of it. And that continued until early 2020, where a lot of other people, obviously COVID impacted everyone, and my hotel closed for a while. I was laid off. And at that point, I decided to go full steam with my social media agency. Obviously, during my career, I started RevParblums, which has gotten very big on Instagram. But most importantly, I think I tapped into some creativity that I didn't realize that I had, that you can't always do with revenue management, right? Revenue is a lot of analytics and numbers, but there's a level of creativity that comes with it. But I think me just kind of starting RevParblums and realizing the skills that I had for social media can tie in with revenue management. I think there is a level of analytics, of understanding your audience and delivering content that the audience will engage with. And I think kind of merging both of those thought processes led me to see that, hospitality is missing something like this. I had been the end user. I was obviously, again, a revenue manager at a bunch of different hotels that were active on social media, and we would either pay agencies or you had freelancers doing it. And I realized there's no strategy to this. It was very haphazard. Even the agencies that people pay big bucks, it's very much like, here's some pictures, we'll post them a few times a week and see what happens, right?
There's a strategy behind it, yeah.
Yeah, there's no strategy. There wasn't like, yeah, let's really tap in and see who is your guest, right? What do they like? What are their interests, and creating the content around that. And then you end up with pages that have a lot of followers but very low engagement, meaning people are not liking and sharing and things like that. So I was in the position when I was at the hotel, your general manager comes and says, hey, well, let's do a promo on social media. And it's like, well, for what? Nobody's paying attention to this, you know? So that gave me the idea to say, hey, you know what? I know both worlds, because the agencies, they don't understand the ins and outs of the hotel business like I do. And not too many people on the hotel side understand social media, because I'm involved in it every day. So, you know, in a nutshell, once I was laid off, I said, well, I have nothing but time now to get this social media business off the ground. Let's, you know, the universe is conspiring to say, you need to start now, not 3 years from now. So that's what I did. And, you know, in a nutshell, that's my career from start to finish.
Nicely done. One thing you said, your first job was reservations manager, which you said was very lucky to get that job. Straight from hospitality university. Why did you choose hospitality? What took you into this career?
Well, you know, I've always been, I've been traveling since I was about one. My family is from the Caribbean. I've had a passport since I was about 1 year old, and constantly going back and forth to the islands, you know, back home in Trinidad, where my family is from. And growing up, we took vacations to different islands and things like that. And I've always been interested in hospitality. And I remember being as young as, I believe I might have been 12 years old at this point, and we were on vacation in St. Martin at a resort. And by 12, you're old enough to where your parents will let you look after your younger brother. They're like, okay, you're responsible enough now. We're going to the casino. You're not old enough to get in. Look after your brother. And I was like, okay, fine. And I remember when they came back, I was telling my dad, I'm like, well, there's nothing to do here for kids. You know, it was like, okay, we go to the beach and hang out, but then there was nothing to do. And my dad asked me this question, and I don't think he would realize the impact that it had, but he said to me, well, what would you do differently? And I started thinking about it at that age. And I said, you know what? I would have some sort of activity room. There would have to be some sort of maybe board games put out or something. But there was nothing like that. And that really started to spark my love of the industry. And I started paying more attention to things like that as we would continue to travel. And when I got to college, my school had a pretty good hospitality program. I didn't initially go in for that, because I think at 16, 17 years old, when you ask a kid, hey, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? It's a very odd question. I mean, how would you know at that age, right? Oh, yeah. So I went into what I was good at. I was good at science in high school. So I went in, I was like, I'll be a biology major. My dad was, he worked in the dental field. And I said, well, I'll do that, because that's what I'd seen most of my life. But when I got to school and I met some people that were in the hospitality program, became friends with them, and I started to be more interested in what they were talking about, what they were doing. And there was a hotel on campus, and they would talk about classes, and then they'd be working at the hotel. And I liked that hands-on experience of, like, you can go from the classroom and implement it that same day. So I eventually switched my major, and best decision I ever made. I was like, this is what I should have been doing the whole time. You know, we could, like I said, you'd work front desk at the hotel, you'd work housekeeping. We had events, student-run events, where, you know, fundraisers for the hotel, where people in the area would come in and they'd donate money to scholarships, things like that. That was completely student-run. We'd order the food, we'd cook the food, we'd serve it, prep, clean up, and did everything. And I loved that. And each year, people got nominated to be GM of that event. I was the GM of it when I was a senior in college. But, you know, those are the kind of things that I don't know too many other disciplines where you can get that level of hands-on experience while you're in school. And I love that about it. And yeah, I love people. I love travel. It's a natural fit, and I'm so glad that I made that choice.
No, clearly a passion. Yeah, just the way you speak, it shows that it really is from the very beginning. 12-year-old and already consulting a resort, yeah, in San Martin.
Yeah.
So you were saying before, like how RevPar Media started. During the pandemic, it was like kick on. But for whomever doesn't know exactly what you do, I mean, you have tens of thousands of followers on Instagram. And what else does RevPar Media do?
Yeah, so I recently expanded into doing digital marketing, so we can do SEO strategy, reputation management, which is helping you obtain reviews for your hotels, responding to those reviews, um, Google ad campaigns. But where this started, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, was social media management. And again, I think what separates me from basically anyone else that I've seen in this space is I'm an influencer, quote unquote, in my own right. I'm in the game. I'm creating for myself. So I'm up on the trends. I'm creating some trends. I have multiple different brands now. It started out with Ref Problems with memes, but because of my love for travel, I have a travel page where I document all my travels around the world, give people insider tips. Because I think, again, what separates me is I've worked in the industry for 20 years, right? So when I go to a restaurant, when I go to a hotel, I'm looking at it from a much different lens than your average Joe. And I could tell you certain things about, hey, this would make this place a good place to go. This is what you should watch out for. So I'm someone that is in the game, which is not something you're going to get from a lot of agencies. Again, I've worked in New York City with top agencies for hotels and this is no knock against them, it's just the way the industry has evolved. Those people don't work in hospitality. They've never worked in hotels. They don't really have an understanding of what the industry is from a day-to-day basis.
You just take it as another project. Yeah.
Right. And they get the social media part of it. They know that strategy, they know that content. But so do I, but I can give you that extra level of, I know your business. And I know that now you need to be posting this type of content because you've got this event coming up. This is how your hotel is trending, seasonality of your hotel, the different packages you need to put out. Those are things that I've done myself. And now kind of marrying that with the social media content and strategy, that's how you really get the power out of it. So that's the main gist of what I do, but I've onboarded a team of people that are a bit more of experts than I am on the digital marketing part of things, managing websites, blog posts, things that I've been familiar with, obviously working in hotels. I worked with our SEO agencies and drive those campaigns, but I now have people that that are experts in those fields. So really what it comes down to is just, I can bring more value and strategy to your social media content than say a lot of these other agencies, because I know exactly what's happening in your building today. I've been there.
Yeah, insider's knowledge. And besides all of that, you also are in lots of different shows, webinars, talks, events. You're really demanded speaker, and one of them in particular, it's Raise Up, where I've seen you collaborating almost every week for many months. So can you speak more about that facet of your professional life as well?
Yeah, that's one that I didn't plan on. I'll be completely honest. It's not something that I thought I'd be doing a lot of. What's funny, I'll tell a quick story. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Vegas, and I saw an old colleague of mine that I hadn't seen for 3 years. And he said, I want to share a story with you, man. He's like, the last time we were here at this club partying like this, I said to you, you should start a podcast. And he's like, you know what you said to me? You said, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And I just smiled, and I'm like, now I can't shut up. It's like, you never know what you could do until you start doing it. But I think, the way it kind of started was people would reach out to me, because a lot of people follow Ref Problems, and I'm talking to owners of multiple hotels, GMs, things like that. And the first thing that happened was a GM of a hotel in New York. He was part of a board, a local advisory board. They were having a meeting this was end of 2020. So right in the thick of COVID and star forecast for next year and things. He was like, we're going to be talking bad news for 2 hours. I want to see if you want to come in, talk about a little social media and bring your sense of humor to it to kind of lighten the mood. And that's really where I think a lot of this has come from, because people who follow my account, they see the sense of humor, but they also know that the comedy comes from a level of knowledge of the industry. And I think that's come across in a lot of my content. I've gotten that a lot over the years. People, I have somebody who's a teacher he's a professor at a university, and he said that, you don't even realize you're teaching the next generation about revenue through your jokes. And I was like, really? He was like, I had his class, they had to do a final presentation. He was like, there's 20 of them, 17 people use your memes in their presentation in some way, shape, or form. And I was blown away. I was blown away. It's one of those things you don't go in with that intent, but you realize, yeah, for me to make the jokes that I make, I need to understand the industry very well.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't make sense when you play with the acronyms and everything.
Yeah. And so I think people have seen that, and it's led to them saying, well, okay, this guy clearly knows what he's talking about, but he also has a sense of humor, and he can deliver the message in a way that is, easily palatable to people. And yeah, it's led to those type of keynote things. Raise Up reached out to me. I've been doing that over a year already on Revenue Hacks, talking about the industry and just kind of, bringing my unique perspective to things and my unique delivery. But yeah, again, it wasn't something that I planned to say, I'm going to be a keynote speaker, I'm going to do podcasts or anything like that. It was the furthest thing from my mind, but here we are.
No, I'm doing great. Absolutely, loving it. So, I mean, besides digital marketing and social media influencer that you've been doing, focusing in the last few years, obviously you have a massive career in focus on revenue, and revenue has been ongoing. Started with the airlines, right, 50 years ago or so, but still, it's a bit of a novelty for other outlets, restaurants, spas. So it's been very much mainly a focus on rooms. So, where are we now when we talk about total revenue? What kind of stage are we in?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a bit more of a conversation. I think we're still in the early stages of that. But I'd say 10 years from now, that's going to be, everybody's going to have to be doing that. From my personal experience, I would say where I really got more into it was when I worked at the water park resort. Because there you really have to focus on total revenue management, because it was, it's not just rooms. You have the water park. The place I worked at also had a ski resort. So for every season of the year, you're selling something else in addition to the room. And then you also have to take into account the other outlets, your retail outlets, grab and go restaurants. So if you're not properly yielding those rooms, we had suites that say would fit up to 14 people, right? In a peak season, you don't want to sell that to 8 people, because that's 6 less people that are going to be around the hotel buying food, drinks, arcade tickets, and all of these other different things. So from that perspective, I love that experience, because it really got you into you had to look at everything. And I think now you're seeing a few more roles, commercial director revenue roles, which would include some of the marketing aspects of things, the sales aspects of things. I think there's a few reasons for that. Probably first and foremost, people had to do multiple roles throughout COVID because of layoffs and lack of revenue. So it became, hey, look, if you got to choose between your revenue and your marketing person, you may keep the revenue person, but the marketing still needs to get done. So you might have to help out in that. And I think that's the future. You're going to see a lot more hybrid roles. You're going to see a lot more sales and or revenue people doing parts of both jobs, which I think will lead to more consultants working with hotels, because Look, I'm a revenue guy. I can't sell, right? I'm not a salesperson, right? So then maybe you could oversee the marketing perspective. I could do that. I could do revenue and do marketing of part of that DOSM role, director of sales and marketing role. But maybe you need to outsource the sales, right? Maybe you need to get a consultant that will help you sell the property, because I mean, everybody can be good at a lot of things, but I think we're all better at one part of that, right? So you may have a salesperson that might be in that same role. Maybe they don't know the revenue as well. So you get a consultant to come help you with that part of it. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I would say people that are getting into the industry now, be as broad as possible, educate yourself on as many departments as possible, because that is going to be the future. You're going to have to be focused on the total hotel and not just revenue or sales or marketing. It's going to be all of that combined, or F&B obviously is wrapped up in that.
Mm-hmm. So those silos that we discussed at the beginning of the pandemic. So you're saying basically it's like
Right.
people have been the lack of manpower because of the people have had to be let go. That created that hybrid role, and that's the way forward, right? So everyone will have to know a bit of everything. Although obviously you're specialized in one field, you can always get support from outside to help you on that particular field. So one is the new roles, and so let's call it the DOSM. You say director of sales and marketing, right?
Sales and marketing.
Exactly. And then this advancement of technology, which has been another hot topic during the pandemic. How much the hotels have digitalized, if that is a word, have stepped forward when it comes to the digitalization. Are we there yet? Still a long way to go for most hotels. Where do you see that going, that path?
I've been, this is a topic I've been very outspoken about in hospitality. I've talked about it a lot on Revenue Hacks. We are a notoriously slow to change industry. We have not adopted technology to the point that we should have. I mean, you look at how most of us live our daily life, right? You live on your phone. You can do banking on your phone. You can, so many different things, all these different apps that you can do it all from your phone. But you get to a hotel and you have to go to the front desk and swipe your credit card. You have to sign a reg card. You have to sit there and go through this 2 to 3 minute process. Which is just something that I think we need to embrace technology more. And again, being somebody that sat in those rooms, sat in those budget meetings, the mentality around technology just needs to change. I've seen so many conversations that start with, okay, if we invest in this technology, how many people can we get rid of? We need this, they need this immediate ROI. Okay, if I'm spending 20 grand on a piece of technology, then that's X amount of people I should be able to get rid of. And that mentality just has to go. It should be, technology needs to be embraced in the way that it will enhance not only your staff, but more importantly, enhance the guest service, right? That's what it should be all about. Now, I think once you do that, maybe, you can, instead of having 3 people work in the front desk, maybe you have 1, but that person can be more of a concierge, a host, a greeter, that something can take away a lot of these mundane tasks. You still see today with a front desk agent having a 3 or 4 page task sheet that they've got to fill out, run this report. It's silly. It's 2022. That's been around since I started in this business in like 2001. We've got to move on, right? We got to be able to do better than that now. There's so much tech out there, and it's out there. There's so many things that can automate this stuff.
It can be a challenge for some hoteliers, that the fact that it's so much tech, like deciding which one to pick for their particular hotel, right? So it can be overwhelming, right. I guess, for some hotels.
Oh, I'm sure. There is a lot out there, and that's a great question as well. I mean, it's got to be looked at through more of what fits for me, and how is this going to enhance my guest service? How is this going to help my staff? And that's got to be part of the conversation when you're choosing one, right? Because you could have something where you think, okay, financially this makes sense, this may help the guest, but it may make the day-to-day of your staff harder. Get them involved in that process. Have an understanding of, okay, if we now eliminate this report, does that cause something else? Is there a ripple effect to that that's going to make your work harder, actually, right? You've got to look at all those different things. I think first and foremost, like I said, the mentality needs to be, how does this technology help my staff, help the customer service, not how many people can we get rid of, this immediate ROI. We've got to get away from that. It's a factor, but it can't be the only factor.
Which links to the next question. I want to move into the talent part. We touched technology, we've touched revenue. Great resignation is the word used in the US, to talk about all these people who, some of them obviously lost a job, but then many of them did just resign and they decided, listen, this is not for me anymore. I don't want to be in the industry, which is becoming a massive problem everywhere. So I've just seen this week in Europe, lots of flights canceled because they don't have, either the airlines don't have a staff or there's no security staff at the airport, so people can go through and they miss their flights. It happened in restaurants, bars, hotels, kitchens. Is there a solution? What is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think there's no one answer to it. With so many things, this is such a multi-layered issue. But things that I have seen is the industry, again, it's the same mentality. We need to evolve. We need to understand that things are not the same as they were pre-COVID. And I've been on record saying I don't think COVID hurt the industry as much as it exposed the problems that were already there, right? We take an example. How many restaurants do you go to now where you scan that QR code to pull up a menu, right? Because number one, you didn't want to have that many touch points, but hey, you may not have a server to come and drop the menu, right? So let's scan this. But that technology has been out forever. That technology has been out for 20 years plus, right? And we need to get out of this mentality that we're only going to make a change when we have to. And I'm still seeing so many people hung up on, you have to come into the office and work. Why? Really ask yourself why that's necessary. You'll hear anything from, well, that's just the way it is, to, well, it's unfair to operations. With all due respect to operations or any other facet of the industry, every role has its own pros and cons, right? You can't check somebody in from home. You can't remotely do housekeeping, right? But you could do that in sales, revenue, marketing, probably some of these and some other roles, right? That's not a good reason to allow talent like that to leave. And I have had conversations with people I know personally that have left the industry for multiple reasons. But I think being overworked was one of them. And you know what? Being able to work remotely, being able to work from home allows people to get back some of their life. That 2 to 4 hours people may commute every day, you now don't have to do that. And we've proven over the past couple of years during the pandemic that people can be effective working from home. People can do that. So why do we have to go back to what it was before? We don't have to. And this is part of the mentality that I think the industry just needs to evolve. We need to understand that, you know what, people are not going to go back to what it was before. And just because, hey, the pandemic is quote unquote over, doesn't mean it has to go back to what it was before. And, we need to keep embracing new ideas, I think is what it comes down to. It's the same thing with technology, and same thing I deal with on, social media. There's this mindset that it's not important. It's not a real work or whatever it is. You see so much of that. And it's because a lot of the leadership still has a very old school mentality, and that mentality needs to change.
Yeah, it's a good point there, because for many people, the pandemic, which seems has been, they just press the pause button and then let 2 years pass by and then, okay, let's play again. No, instead of trying to change things as the situation evolves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very good point. Last question I have for you, and it's the same I ask everyone at the end of the interview. It's about, you have loads of experience. So imagine that young boy or girl thinking of going to college. and considering hospitality, yes or no, is that a good path? Will I succeed?
Mhm.
Should I try another option? So with your experience, what will be your advice for that young person?
Well, I would say what worked for me is just educate yourself as much as possible. And like I said, what I loved the most about working in or going to school for hospitality was because I could sit in a class about F&B in the morning and be doing it in that same afternoon, right? So you'll find out very quickly what's for you, what's not for you. As you can tell from my conversation, I've never worked in the kitchen. I learned very early on, this is not for me. I like to cook at home. I like to cook one meal for myself and my family. I'm not cooking, for 2,000 people. I'm not dealing with all of that. But I learned that in college. I hated the F&B classes. That wasn't for me. So I knew I wasn't going down that path. So get involved in something, whether it's in school or doing internships. Do as many of those as possible. During my internships, I did front desk, I waited tables, I bartended, I did housekeeping, I did all of those different things, and you will figure out your path. You'll figure out, what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and that's the only way is to get in and do it. And I know that there's a stigma around the industry now, and I think it's tough for us to get young talent. That, like we just talked about, the talent we have is leaving, right? Because of things that are happening in the industry. And, that's the scary part of this is how are we going to get that next generation of people into this industry, loving the industry, getting in and bringing it to where it needs to be. So I would say anybody who is interested, educate yourself as much as possible, ask questions, get involved in things, but bring your ideas. We need more young people in the industry. We need a younger mindset, a mindset that is not afraid to change, not afraid to look at things differently, and speak up. If you're in those meetings, it could be tough, and there's a whole evolution process in that as well. But hey, if you're in meetings, speak up, bring your ideas to the table, because we need more of that. We need to overload this old dinosaur mentality with new, fresh ideas.
Yeah, and the more new, fresh ideas are there on the market, the faster things would change, right?
Exactly.
Normal.
Exactly.
Okay, those are all the questions that I had for you, Calvin. So again, thank you so very much, Calvin Tilokee, founder of RevPar Media. It's been a pleasure always listening to you on the shows that you share online weekly, and then obviously now just for me on the interview. Again,
yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's always nice chatting with you, and I'll have you on my show soon. So we'll continue the conversation.
That's all, Kevin. Speak soon.
Take care, man. Thank you.
That was all for now. Hope you found it useful. Remember that you have more information on our website www.torresconsulting.co.uk, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. Stay well. Goodbye for now.